Michaela Chester here with Shannon Scoville at the Wrestling Championships. Shannon, Matt Ramos just shocked the world last night, pinning three-time national champ Spencer Lee of Iowa. You were there. You saw it in person. What was that moment like in the arena?
It was the craziest thing I have ever seen. I mean, well, Ramos, first of all, he came off first whistle and he was in it. I mean, Spencer Lee took the first shot, but Ramos defended, and then he went right in on top of his own. He picked up quick back points to take the lead, and he ended the first period ahead. And Spencer Lee has almost never been down going into the second period. And we talked a little bit, but the last time these two faced off, Ramos did the same thing. He came out of the gates firing, he picked up back points. But we just didn't, nobody could have possibly predicted that not only would Ramos take the lead after the first period, he'd hold that lead and he would pin Spencer Lee. And he erupted the crowd, first of all. Everybody went nuts. And then he silenced the crowd. And it was just this weird feeling. The vibes were off. Everything was a little strange. You could just feel it in the tunnel. You could feel the sort of shock and the confusion. And I mean, just nobody picked Ramos. It was almost a given that not only was Spencer Lee going to win this semi, but he was going to win his fourth national title. And there's never been a wrestler going for 4 national titles that doesn't get the 4th national title. It's won 3 that comes to the tournament ready to win a 4th and doesn't win it. And so it was the craziest experience and huge moment for Matt Ramos and really the Purdue Boilermakers. What a night for them on the wrestling stage.
Everybody's still reeling from it? Are the vibes still a little off there?
Oh, the vibes are absolutely off. And I was walking into the arena today, and it's all anyone wants to talk about is, can you believe what just happened? And I think there's the sense of like, we can't actually believe what just happened because just the way it happened, the fact that he pinned him. This is the greatest upset in college wrestling in decades, perhaps in the entire history of the sport.
Okay, so let's describe the match a little bit more in depth. Can you kind of break down how Ramos did it?
Yeah, and he talked a little bit after the match too. He said, when you're going against a 3-time national champion, you have to let it fly, and that's exactly what he did. Mentioned he came out off the first whistle, and he was in it. There was no fear in him, and a lot of guys will wrestle Spencer Lee cautious because Spencer is so strong, and he can put people on their back so quickly, and you never want to get put to your back. So there's this caution that you see in a lot of the wrestlers who take on Spencer, but not Ramos. He was ready for big moves of his own. So he comes off, he takes a 4-1 lead after the end of the first. Lee escapes, and then Lee does something pretty uncharacteristic for Spencer Lee and pretty uncharacteristic for college wrestling, and that he takes top to start the second. He's got an incredible top game, so it's not super surprising that he would do this, particularly down 4-1, but Lee's pretty much an auto bottom guy. He usually takes bottom, gets the one escape, and is back on his feet for a takedown. And for him to take top, you kind of wonder what's going on in his head in that moment. Is he afraid he's going to lose? What is he thinking? Probably he's not afraid, but just sort of an uncharacteristic, unusual move. And when that happened, people were paying attention. Like, that was definitely a decision on Lee's part that got us all watching his match even more closely. And he stayed in it. I mean, he got a takedown. He got 4 back points of his own. He was leading 5-4, and then he got a takedown that was challenged, takes lead 7-5. And then Ramos does what he did in the third period, and he puts Spencer Lee on his back to end the match.
These two have faced before, and you mentioned Lee pinned Ramos in their last match, but just how unlikely was this? Everybody expected Lee to win.
Oh yeah, everybody picked Lee, and I mean, we talked a little bit yesterday about Princeton's Pat Glory perhaps being the biggest threat to Lee, but even that, I think people were like, well, Lee's going for his 4th. Like, he's the favorite without a doubt. And nobody was looking at Ramos, and particularly because he had pinned him in their last match. And when he pinned him in the last match, it was kind of like, okay, Ramos comes out with this big move, and Spencer wakes up, and he knows what he has to do, and he does it. He's that good. So I think when Spencer Lee was trailing yesterday, nobody was really thinking that that's how it was going to end. I think everybody thought Spencer Lee had more in him. He's so dominant. He's known to be able to turn things around and put people on their back. He also almost always is in the lead. So the fact that he was trailing is unusual, but then you figure, okay, he's just going to do what he's always done. He's going to win. So wild match.
When Ramos had Lee on his back, was everybody just jaw dropped? I mean, I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, it was almost this delayed reaction because nobody could believe what they were seeing. And Ramos was readjusting, and so he didn't have the pin right away. It looked like he had Lee in a really bad position. And so you're just kind of watching. You're watching the ref. You're watching Ramos. You're watching Lee struggling on his back. And there's just shock. I mean, it wasn't even like there was a lot of noise. The place was all in on this match. And when it was over, there was great cheer because this was a big achievement for Ramos. But yeah, everyone was just kind of looking at each other, trying to understand what had just unfolded.
I can't even imagine. All right, so Shannon, there were two Purdue upsets last night, one way or the other. In March Madness, FDU upset one seed Purdue, just the second 16-1 upset in March Madness history. Pretty big one. And then Purdue's Matt Ramos. This is the biggest wrestling upset in history, you said. Which one do you think takes the cake?
Oh, Matt Ramos. I mean, just the feeling in this arena, you can't even, I've never seen anything like it. For 15,000 people to be stunned in one moment. And then, of course, you've got matches going on at the same time, and you have the semifinals of 133 about to come out of the tunnel. And you could just kind of tell those guys were a little rattled too. This was not expected, and it really, it, it sent shockwaves through the arena.
All right, well, Shannon, thanks for breaking it down. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.